The first pyramids were massive construction projects built in one location. Then, for no apparent reason, the entire operation shifted to a new site. Why would these famous builders make such a radical change? The Egypt detectives are on the case.
"5,000 years ago, the Egyptians invented something astonishing: the pyramid. For 100 years, the Egyptians continued to build more pyramids, always very close to the first one. Every one of these was a huge construction requiring thousands of workers and millions of tons of raw material. And then suddenly, for no apparent reason, they moved the whole operation north to a brand new site.
It wasn't the only time either. The pyramids kept moving. What was wrong? The Egypt detectives, Dominic Montserrat and Miriam Cook, will try to solve the mystery. To do it, they will encounter the ancient Egyptians' obsession with the afterlife. The detectives start their investigation here, on their mobile headquarters. Building each pyramid was an enormous operation. As many as 30,000 workers labored hard on each one. They all had to be fed, mostly with bread, fish, and beer. Building equipment had to be made and moved to the site. The effort was staggering. The first pyramids were built close to the ancient capital of Memphis, at Saqqara. So far, it makes sense. But the next one, the Great Pyramid, was built much further away at Giza. The pyramids then moved again, and finally ended up where they started, in Memphis. It's a strange case. At first, the locations seem completely random, but there must be an answer. No one would move that many workers, that much food, that much beer, without a reason. For thousands of years, those fascinated with Egypt have tried to find an answer, but they can't agree. The Egypt detectives, too, have different ideas.
This is the situation we have. This is the pyramids at Saqqara, there's the Nile, and then the move up to Giza.
And we need to explain why.
These are religious monuments. The Egyptians are incredibly particular about their sacred spaces, so I wonder if there isn't some religious aspect of the Giza plateau that influences the relocation.
Dominic believes ancient writings point to a religious solution. But Miriam is looking for more concrete facts. She feels the most telling evidence is that the first pyramid in the new location is the massive Great Pyramid.
Building the Great Pyramid was the most challenging engineering feat that they'd ever attempted. The puzzle must have something to do with that. The move north must have solved engineering or structural problems.
Well, what problems?
Well, that's what we need to find out.
In search of clues, Miriam heads to the place where it all began, the home of Egypt's first pyramid. Here, near the ancient capital of Memphis, the pyramid scheme began, somewhere around 2650 BC. These amazing monuments were a crucial part of the burial rituals of ancient Egypt. Egyptians believed that the pharaoh was resurrected as Osiris, king of the dead. So that his spirit would be comfortable in the afterlife, incredible care was taken to mummify the king's earthly body. Then, it was laid to rest inside a massive tomb, the pyramid. From this lap of luxury, the pharaoh's spirit could ascend.
The Egyptians were great pragmatists. Take this first pyramid right behind me here at Saqqara. It's called the Step Pyramid, and it looks very different to the other pyramids. Its sides are stepped, not smooth. And it's these very steps that tell a story.
Before this pyramid was built, The elite of ancient Egypt were buried in mastabas, or flat-roofed tombs.
Look at this first step. It's obviously the first thing to be built. And the incredible thing is they could have stopped right here. Without going any further, they'd already created a low-lying flat-roofed tomb called a mastaba. Until the step pyramid, the kings had been very happy to be buried within these mastabas. So the builders could have packed up their tools and gone home. But they didn't. They had an inspiration. Why not build big and place more mastabas on top of the first? And that's just what they did. And then they built another, and then another, and then another. And the result was the very first pyramid. I think the evolution of all the pyramids was the result of these practical what-if experiments. The ancient Egyptians became increasingly ambitious, testing the limits of their skills and their raw materials.
The Egyptians were building bigger and better pyramids. But just how far would they go? Egypt's pyramids are immense and the source of one of the biggest mysteries that still exists in this fabled land. The Egypt detectives want to know why they kept moving. Miriam Cook knows the pyramid builders moved from Saqqara to Memphis. But why? She studies the ground in Saqqara. Was there something here that stopped the pyramids from growing ever larger? She's arranged to meet a leading Egyptian geologist, Dr. Behey Issawi. Is he the expert who will help her solve the case of the moving pyramids?
And limestone was used in building all of the pyramids. What makes it such a perfect building material?
It's very durable kind of rock, and secondly, Egypt is very rich in limestone. And third, that it has layering and jointing, which help quarrying the types of limestone.
So the layers actually dictate the size of the blocks?
Yes, certainly, and you can see the layers. This is the size, this is the maximum size. The rocks can be cut from these layers.
But what happens when ambition runs into reality, when the local limestone isn't enough anymore?
So when they wanted to build a bigger pyramid, they were actually limited by the raw material here?
Yeah, and not only this, but also because of the space also. You don't have quite a good space here to build bigger pyramids. And
so they had to go to a different place?
Oh, yeah, indeed they did.
Were the limitations of Saqqara really behind the decision to move the entire pyramid-making industry? And if so, why was it moved to Giza? Like the pyramids themselves, Miriam makes the trip north to find some answers.
Well, we're here at Giza. What made this a better place to build?
If you look at the stones behind you, you find that you have several layers of rocks.
And this limestone is a lot more easy to get out.
Yes,
then.
the joints on both sides, and then the bedding planes, then you can easily pull the rock from its original place.
So are these unfinished blocks?
Yeah, that's how they do it, you see, by chiseling along the joints by harder rocks. And that's how they cut this into big pieces, of course, depending on the joints and on the bedding planes. And that's why they came here, because it's bigger blocks than any other place in the area.
Bigger blocks and flatter ground. For a man of ambition like Pharaoh Khufu, that may have been a perfect fit. But is something that simple really the answer to the mystery? Has the case been solved so quickly?
Giza was the perfect place. Plenty of limestone blocks to work with and a solid base upon which to begin building one of the wonders of the world, the Great Pyramid.
How do you account for the next pyramid? They didn't build that here at Giza, but miles away over there at Abu Ruash.
I don't see the problem with that. There was plenty of good limestone up there as well.
Well, bear with me. We'll go on up to Abu Ruash, and I'll show you a more powerful reason than geology for building pyramids up here in the north.
The mystery deepens. If Giza was the perfect spot, why move? The case is about to take the detectives straight into the heart of an ancient cult of sun worship. Thousands of years after they were built, the pyramids still inspire awe and mystery. One of the biggest questions is, why did they keep moving? The Egypt detectives are on the case. Miriam Cook, an archaeologist, is drawn towards the geological evidence, while Egyptologist Dominic Montserrat thinks that the location of the pyramids is part of a bigger mystery. The Great Pyramids of Giza are the most well-known in the world, but Giza is actually the second location on which pyramids were built, and shortly after they were finished, the entire pyramid-building enterprise moved again to Abu Ruash. Here, though, the trail grows cold. The pyramids are not very impressive.
Well, you've brought me here to Abu Roash, and I'm standing on the pyramid, but it doesn't look very finished to me.
That's right, it probably never was finished. It's always seemed like an odd thing to do, to come all the way up here to build if there's all that marvellous building stone on the Giza Plateau. I just don't find the geological argument accounts for everything.
Well, how would you explain it then, Dominic?
Well, if we'd been standing up here 4,500 years ago, we'd have been able to see Heliopolis, and I think that's a really important clue.
And why is that?
Well, if you buy me a cup of coffee, I might just tell you.
OK, you're on.
Heliopolis, the city of the sun. For thousands of years, it was the capital of sun worship in Egypt. How could this case take the detectives to a city that's long been lost?
Well, I've got your coffee here, but first I want you to explain why you think Heliopolis is so important for the move to Abu Roash and Giza.
If you look at the names of the pharaohs who built at Giza and Abu Ruash, you see something really interesting. Because first of all, you've got Djedefre at Abu Ruash, and then Khefren.
And Menkaure, who built the third pyramid at Giza.
Menkaure, exactly. And what have these three pharaohs all got in common? Re in their names.
Could a common name be the clue the detectives are looking for? Re was the sun god. He likely inspired these pharaohs to end their names with Re. But how would that move the pyramids? The Egyptians believed that every pharaoh joined the sun god when he died. So the pharaoh's final resting place had to be linked with this god. The pyramids may have been built to help the pharaohs make their final journey. But how?
Well, Heliopolis was the city of the sun, wasn't it? They must have been worshippers of his cult, because they all chose names which honoured him.
Well, you can have your coffee now.
Oh, thank you.
But we still know so little about Heliopolis.
Well, that's right. It's just a suburb of modern Cairo now. Might be worth checking out.
The trail leads here, beneath the outskirts of Cairo. This is where Heliopolis once stood. But can anything be learned here now? Or is this ancient case grown too cold? After so many thousands of years, what could be left of an ancient cult worshipping the sun?
Get a good view from up here.
Miriam meets Dr. David Jeffries, who has spent years trying to unravel the secrets of the lost city of Heliopolis. Can he help her crack this case? In a choked suburb of modern-day Cairo could be the answer to a mystery thousands of years old. The Egypt detectives certainly hope so.
Well, it's definitely worth the climb. We've got a wonderful view from up here. We're looking over the town and temple area of Heliopolis.
When Dr. David Jeffries sees this view, he doesn't see Cairo, but one of the greatest religious complexes ever built, Heliopolis. It's long since been destroyed, but emerging from the choking haze, there is one vital clue left standing. It's an obelisk built many years after the pyramids, but the two are closely linked. It marks the spot where a massive temple once stood, a temple devoted to the sun god, Re. Jeffries believes this obelisk helps explain why the pyramids of ancient Egypt moved where they did.
Right, well, here's the obelisk. In order to be comfortable, shall we just go over into the shade?
I think that's a good idea.
Discuss this. Yeah. Right, well, we're standing here in Sun City. We're trying to find a spot out of the sun, at least. Let's talk about it here.
So if we've got a huge sun temple and pharaohs who are building pyramids who are associated with the sun cult. What's the link?
Well, it's interesting because the whole question of the distribution of pyramids is not really well understood. They seem to skip about in an almost random way.
Yeah.
But one thing that is significant is that when the sun cult becomes important to the royal family, they move to Giza and then to Abu Roash, and really that's when the connection with the sun cult becomes really clear.
Right.
Rajadef, who is the first one to have Ra, the sun, Re, the sun, in his name, and to call himself the son of the sun, he builds at Abu Roash, which is the most clearly visible from where we are at Heliopolis. And then all the Giza pyramids are in a direct line of sight with Heliopolis.
4,500 years ago, without the haze, David believes the pharaohs would have been able to see the Sun Temple here at Heliopolis from their pyramids at Giza and Abu Roash. They would need to complete their journey into the afterlife. While smog wasn't a problem, there was one obstacle. On the outskirts of Cairo is something called the Citadel of the Mountain. This rock would have blocked the view of the Sun Temple at Heliopolis from many locations across the Nile. Without a line of sight to the Sun Temple, the pyramids were useless. The last resting place of the pharaoh had to be in line with the temple.
I've been studying the maps, and I think that there's a problem with this lines of sight theory of David Jeffries. The next three pharaohs built their pyramids back near Saqqara at this place called Abu Sir, and they were still worshipping the sun god Re. But the problem is that the line of sight between Abu Sir and the Sun Temple at Heliopolis is blocked by the Citadel Rock.
Has this promising lead come up dry? Was David Jeffries wrong? It's true that the pyramids at Abu Sir have no direct line to Heliopolis. Miriam rushes to Abu Sir with David Jeffries to see if there's an explanation. What she finds are mysterious ruins. They're just a few miles northeast of the Abu Sir pyramids. Some think this was once the site of another sun temple.
And where we're standing is the key site. We're actually on top of the Sun Temple now. We only know of two of them as it is. We're standing on the actual tower of the Sun Temple.
So what's that structure down there for?
Right, well, rather like a pyramid, the Sun Temple is surrounded by its own temple complex. And what we're looking at is really a unique structure. We don't know of anything quite like it from anywhere else in Egypt. And it's an altar of what is sometimes called Egyptian alabaster or travertine, consisting of 4 segments that are actually a hieroglyphic sign. It's the offering table with a loaf of bread on it, the sign for Hetep, which means to be satisfied or to make offerings. And then
once there was a round table on which these offerings would have been placed. There could also have been chambers for sacrificing animals and basins to catch their blood. It would have been a very imposing complex, and from the top, Miriam and David can clearly see the pyramids of Abu Sir.
We can see the pyramids at Abu Sir quite clearly from here.
But if the pyramids here had to see Heliopolis, these ruins haven't solved that problem.
Even when the kings are building at Abu Sir, the point really is this question of visibility from the center of the sun cult itself at Heliopolis. The Abu Sir pyramids are out of sight from Heliopolis.
No temple, no matter how grand, could remove the enormous finger of rock that would have blocked the direct line of sight from here to Heliopolis. Or could it?
Just to the south of Heliopolis, south of Cairo, you've got this promontory that sort of sticks out from the main cliff line where the Islamic citadel was built. We call it the Citadel Rock. And that interrupts the line of sight between Heliopolis and the Abu Sir pyramids, even though the Abu Sir pyramids are sun kings, but their pyramids are back near close to Memphis and they cannot be seen from the center of the sun cult. But the Sun Temple
There would be no direct view of Heliopolis from the pyramids, but the new temple would be able to see fine. It would serve as a sort of spiritual halfway house that could bridge the site of the pyramids to the seat of the sun cult itself. The explanation could solve the mystery once and for all. If this temple served as a middle ground, then all of the temples of Egypt would have a view of the main temple in Heliopolis. All of the pharaohs would be assured of their journey into the afterlife. The case has revealed something amazing about the ancient Egyptians. They were both pragmatic and philosophical in building their temples. What motivated their decisions one century was revised the next. But always with the same goal. The final resting place of the pharaoh would be a grand monument to this life, but also a way to journey safely into the next. The Egypt detectives took different roads, but they've solved another case. They know why the pyramids moved and what linked them together.
Well, I must admit, I did think that the whole pyramid building business was to do with geology and building blocks, but David has convinced me there's more to it.
I had a feeling it wasn't as straightforward as your geological argument.
Yeah, but don't forget that the first move to Giza was about limestone and space, and not sun cults.
Fair enough. So we're both right.
Yep, chin chin.